Well, hello and welcome to the Watering Hole this evening. If we haven't met before, my name is Jonathan Thomas and I'm a pastor of Cornerstone Church in Abergavenny. And tonight I'm joined by a new friend, someone I've never spoken to before. So this is going to be my first conversation. And joining me is Kristian Dimond, who's a pastor actually not that far away in Hereford. Is that right?
Yeah, not too far, in Wellington, a little village just north of Hereford, yeah.
Very good. So we're very close, but at the moment we're probably under very different rules of lockdown.
Yeah, I think so.
It's very good. And so this evening we're going to find out a little bit about Kristian's life. And so I'm going to interview Kristian for the next half an hour or so. And then it'll really be over to you to ask any questions. So you can comment here on YouTube and I'll pick those up. And then we can ask questions later on. But look, you must be wondering why have two pastors got together. But let me just introduce you a little bit. Kristian, can you tell us just a little bit about kind of family and how long you've been in Wellington?
So we've been here just over 12 months now. It's been a bit of a roller coaster, a strange first year of ministry in Herefordshire. Started off first 6 months was great. Family settled well, got kids into schools, found a home and all the rest of it. First Sunday of 2020, we had a baptismal service, church meal together, incredible joy. And then the flood came, which Wellington was apparently the worst village hit in the UK. So literally people kayaking down the road, houses devastated, businesses annihilated, and all the rest of it. Thankful to God, the chapel was completely untouched. So we recovered from that, tried to help families recover from that. And then COVID-19 turned up. And we've been in lockdown ever since. But God is good. The church is continuing to flourish. So we're very thankful to him for all he's doing.
And so, I mean, how has lockdown been for you? I mean, yeah, how's that worked out? You got children and what is lockdown life like?
Yeah, I've got 5 children. So homeschooling has been a challenge. My wife, I don't know how she's been doing it, to be honest, because our eldest is doing his GCSEs. Then we've got another boy who's 13 and then 3 girls. So the youngest is 3 and then a 6-year-old and then a 10-year-old. So this kind of all different key stages. And Carla's done a remarkable job keeping them fed and entertained in these last few months and trying to keep up with keeping contact with people in the church as well. We just had loads and loads of phone calls and emails and Zoom meetings and all the rest of it to keep people encouraged and challenged as well by the word of God. That's important. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. So look, Kristian, you're a minister of a church. So, I mean, growing up, was this your life's ambition as a little boy? Were you desperate to be a minister?
Absolutely not. No. God was never, ever mentioned in my home growing up. Now and again, my nan would say, "Good night, God bless." And that was really it. It was only my granddad who was a Christian, but he was always kind of the crazy granddad who went on about Jesus, and everybody else just kind of got on with life. It was a pretty godless home, unfortunately. Went to church for kind of funerals, weddings, that kind of thing. I saw church as quite a scary place. It was full of people who were really, really nice and friendly, but just not a place that someone goes if you've grown up in Gibbonsdown in Barry. It's not for me.
So look, you're Welsh before you moved over the border. So brought up in Barry. So not a religious home. But I mean, how was life as a boy? How was that for you?
It was a bit of a mixed bag. So I knew that I had parents who loved me. We were not a well-off family at all. So I grew up in probably the poorest part of the town, but we always had food on the table. So we always had clothes and food, even if they were not as nice as the other people in school. But the most difficult part of my childhood was my dad's aggression, really. And I never thought, I'm worse off than anyone else, because I just thought that was normal, that dads get angry and they can be violent. And I never really give it much thought. It didn't bother me at all getting a beating, because usually I'd done something wrong. Other times it was just my dad was frustrated at something. He suffered with mental health problems most of his adult life. And I just thought that was quite normal for him to be aggressive. The bit that frustrated me was when I got a bit older and I wanted to stop him being violent towards my mum and my little brothers, and I couldn't. I just wasn't strong enough to stop him. So there was an element of fear in the household in that respect. And I'd always try and then put myself in that place where I'd rather take a beating, because it didn't really bother me that much, whereas I knew it bothered my mum and my brothers.
Yeah. So did you find any kind of outlet, or anything, was that all consuming, or did you find other things in life?
Yeah, my escapism was, first of all, was in school. I quite enjoyed school, which I know is quite weird to say these days, but I did. And I enjoyed doing schoolwork, and then sport. That was my true escapism, where I felt free. I could be myself, and all the worries of home or anything else just disappeared into the background. And especially football. That was a place where good things seemed to happen when I played football, and I just felt I could truly express myself, and yeah, it was an enjoyable time. I always felt joy when I played football.
Yeah. No, I'm going to be honest, okay? I don't know much about football, but it does seem to me that you must have been quite good at football, because at the age of 12, you went to play for Cardiff City.
I did, yeah. I was very fortunate to be spotted playing in the local leagues in Barry, because back in those days, you didn't have mini football. So like you see now on a Saturday morning, all over the country, there's lots of little kids playing with little goals and little nets, and that's wonderful. But back in the late 80s, it was 11-a-side, full-size pitch, whether you were 5 or 6, and the youngest age group was under 10s. So I started playing when I was 6. My dad forced me to go. I didn't want to go. I was crying in the car on the way there, to my shame. And my dad's friend said, "Look, we'll look after him, take him under our wing." And all the other lads were bigger and stronger and better than me. I was lucky to get 5 minutes at the end of a match. But then as I got a bit older, and Cardiff City spotted me playing and asked me to go and train with them. And then Swansea City, I think it was about a year later, I must have been about 13 when I went to Swansea. And then it started to get a bit more serious, because I always thought when I was at Swansea, I'm lucky to be here. One day this is going to stop, and this is going to all be over. And it was just a dream, because Jan Molby was the manager of Swansea City at the time, and I grew up as a Liverpool fan. So it was incredible to see one of my boyhood idols there. Having conversation with him is just, lovely.
I had him in my Panini sticker album, and that's it.
He was a little bit wider than every other sticker, wasn't he? A big lad.
Yeah, but it's good. Okay, so Swansea went well. Your football.
Yeah, it was. I was just overwhelmed by it, because they were putting me with the under 16s and then the under 18s, and I was this scrawny, skinny little 13-year-old lad. And I remember Jan Molby calling me over one lunchtime, and I was just excited that he knew my name. And then I sat down with him, and he said, "You're not playing with the under," I think it was the under 14s at the time. "You're not playing with them anymore." "Oh, he's going to give me the elbow. That's it. It's over." And he said, "No, I want you playing with the youth team. And by the time you're 15, 16, you're going to be with me in the first team. So you just need to get your head around that and accept that you are good enough." And I didn't know what to say. I don't think I did say anything. I just probably nodded my head nervously and walked away. And they offered me this crazy long contract, youth team and then professional terms. And it was all a bit much to take in. I couldn't quite accept it, really, because I just never thought I was that good. And then things got a bit crazier from there then in the next few years. with other clubs getting involved, and it's just a different world.
Yeah, so I mean, English clubs started to look at you. Crystal Palace came knocking.
Yeah, English clubs were not allowed to approach Welsh players until your 14th birthday. That was a rule that the Welsh FA had managed to get in place to try and get Welsh lads playing for Welsh clubs, mainly Cardiff, Swansea and Wrexham at the time. But then as soon as you turn 14, heads are turned when Premier League teams come in. And Crystal Palace were a bit cheeky because they got in touch with my parents before I was 14. So technically they broke the rules. And they whisked us off to London to show us what a Premiership club looks like. And as kind and generous as Swansea City were, they just couldn't compete with everything that Crystal Palace were offering. And when you're whisked off to London and your parents are put up in 5-star hotels, eating fancy meals, and you're rubbing shoulders with the Beckhams and the Redknapps and all the rest of it, it was too much for a young man to not be wowed by. Even my parents were wowed by that.
Yeah. No, I think I've heard you kind of share elsewhere that kind of the day before you were going to go and sign, kind of you had an altercation in school. What happened there?
I was being bullied in school for a few years, actually. And because of my dad being so violent, I really didn't want to be violent myself. I was fed up of hearing people say, as an excuse for doing bad things, oh, well, his dad's like that, or his granddad's like that. And it's a kind of a given that, oh, well, they'll be like that. And I thought, no, I don't want to be like that. And I can stop this. But the day before I was due to sign my contract with Crystal Palace, the papers were coming and they were making a big fuss in the school. Representatives were coming down from London and all the rest of it. And I think this lad who'd been bullying me thought this was his opportunity to scupper that day. And he tried to get me into a fight because our school had a very clear rule. If you throw a punch, whether you are to blame or not, you're suspended for 2 days. So he was trying to get me to react and kind of hit me a few times. And I didn't react initially. I just made my way back into the school office. I figured out what he was trying to do. And then just before I got to the door, he struck me again in the back of the head. And it was a bit of a blur. I don't remember it that clearly, but I know that I turned around and I did hit him just once, but I hit him. And he was on the floor beneath me. And I had smashed his glasses in his eyes, and it wasn't a pretty sight. Now, I had dreamt of that moment for a long, long time, if I'm honest. I wanted to have done that way before, but I didn't feel joy. Didn't feel victory, didn't feel anything like I thought I would. I just felt fear that I was going to end up like my dad. I knew I had this power, I knew I had this anger within me, and I had failed to suppress it. But I did make a promise to myself that day that I wouldn't have a fight again, or I wouldn't throw a punch again. But it did ruin the day, the following day. I was suspended from school and everything had to be cancelled. They made it clear that my behaviour off the pitch was just as important as my performances on the pitch. But what I didn't know at the time is that there were lots and lots of other clubs trying to sign me. So they still signed me. There was less fuss made. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, that's a lot. I mean, you're what, 15 at this point?
Just turned 14 at that point, yeah.
Man, that's a lot to go through. So you moved to London then?
Yeah, so what happened then for the next 12 months was I was travelling to London every weekend. And Crystal Palace would pay somebody to come and pick me up, drive me to London, and play a match on a Saturday for the youth team, watch the first team play, and then travel back home on a Sunday or a Saturday night. But the club started to realise that things were not well at home and in school, and also they wanted to push me up an age group, just as Swansea had done a few years before. So they made arrangements for me to leave home a year earlier than scheduled. So instead of waiting until I finished my GCSEs in Wales and then starting an apprenticeship, they moved me down to London when I was 15. So they paid a family to look after me. So I was kind of in digs And that family, lovely family from Surrey, who kind of did my washing and cleaning and put a roof over my head and took me to school and all the rest of it. And so that all happened very quickly as well. I had to make a decision on that very, very quickly. And my mum was a bit worried about that, losing her eldest son at 15 years old. And I think she was worried for other reasons as well, because by that point, I realized, even though I wasn't strong enough to protect my mum from my dad, I could bribe him. And I could say things like, well, you're not coming to watch me play. I'm not getting you tickets for that game if you do that. And I realized that my mum would have feared me not being there to kind of prevent that violence. And so a week after I left home, my mum and dad divorced, and they went their separate ways. So that was a challenge as well.
I mean, that's so much to take on at such a young age. That home situation, that sense of responsibility, but as well, the game of football opening up, and huge possibilities. I mean, I think next other clubs came looking and kind of, started kind of bidding for you, I guess.
Yeah, I think it was a combination of playing well for Crystal Palace and for Wales too. So I was very fortunate to travel the world with Wales and represent my country, which I was immensely proud of. And then I returned from a tournament in Italy, and Steve Coppell was the first team manager at Palace at the time, and he called me in the office and said, look, Inter Milan are making an approach to sign you. But the club has made it very clear that you're in our plans. We're shortly going to be offering you a long-term contract, professional contract. So we're not going to bother with the whole youth team, 90 quid a week or whatever it was as an apprentice. You can just go straight as a professional when you turn 17. And I want you in the first team at 16. And I'd started training with the first team just now and again. And so although I believed Steve Coppell and I had so much respect for him, and the club had been fantastic, Inter Milan was like that next level. Again, this is like one of the biggest teams in the world at the time. Best player in the world, Ronaldo, was playing for them, who was one of my heroes. And I thought, as a defender, if I'm training against Ronaldo every day, this is something else. And a lot of people had said to me that my style of play would suit Italy probably better than the Premier League or Championship. So I wanted to go. That was what I fancied. But my agent was saying, no, forget that there's not much money involved. He wanted me to go to Tottenham because they were offering obscene amounts of money. And it would have changed my mum's life as well as my life. It would have set me up. We're talking about enough money to buy houses. So it was stupid, really. And to kind of be making those decisions when you're 15, 16 years old is a lot to take, because you can't trust your advisors. My agent, who's my advisor, he's on 10%. So, I wasn't stupid enough even at 15 to think that he had my best interest at heart. He's thinking about his own pockets, and tricky.
I mean, how does this all affect you at 15 to potentially earn enough money to, I guess you could pay off your mother's mortgage, you could buy a house, you could, do whatever. How do you deal with that?
That's where the wrestling was. So it was that wrestle between being loyal to a club that's been really good to me and looked after me, going with my heart and what I want. My own desire was Milan, and then thinking about financial stability. But at 15, 16, you don't tend to look that far into the future, because I'd kind of got past the point where you're thinking, is he going to make it or is he not going to make it? Everything had pointed to, you're going to make it, and you're going to make a lot of money anyway, wherever you play. But that was the appeal. That was the thing that got me drawn to Tottenham, was I could change my mum's life. I could, pay off her mortgage. I could transform her life completely, and I could do it next week. I haven't got to wait. That was a huge temptation.
Yeah. And then I think you were playing for the youth team, is it? And
yeah, against Tottenham, ironically. I wanted some time to think about it, and it looked like I was going to go with the Tottenham deal, just for that financial stability. And another time, they had a guy called David Pleat, who was kind of the academy director, and he was really, really making great strides to push younger players into the first team, and I believed that. And but then in this match against Tottenham, I broke my ankle, and I knew it was bad because I heard the crack. I knew I'd broken it, but you can break an ankle and you can be back playing within a month sometimes. But unfortunately, I'd torn the ligaments quite badly, and so I didn't recover within a month. It took a long, long time to recover. Ultimately, I never recovered. But in that time of being injured, I saw a different side to professional football. I saw the loneliness. I saw how when you're not performing on a pitch, you're of no real use. So you're not really involved in the team. You're not really acknowledged by management because you kind of like cast aside because you're useless for that given period. So that was tough. That was lonely, very, very lonely. I'd never experienced that before. It was my first real injury. And then things got a bit worse again because I had a lump checked out, and I was told I needed an operation. They thought it was cancer. And it all just kind of seemed to happen at once. And yeah, I mean, they were great. Crystal Palace were fantastic, because I panicked after the injury and I signed for Palace thinking Tottenham are not going to want me because of this injury. And Palace were incredible. They took me to the top specialist with this cancer scare. He said he thought it was and needed an operation. Within a week, I was on an operating table. So it was all private medical care, no waiting lists or anything like that. But then on the day of the operation, the surgeon cancelled it. And he said, we've done the scans. There is no cancer.
Wow.
Either you've been misdiagnosed or somebody up there is looking out for you. And when he said that, I just laughed because I didn't believe in God. So I just thought, oh, the guy got it wrong. But the surgeon said, he said, the thing I don't understand is the guy who diagnosed you is literally the best at what he does. He's one of those guys that just doesn't make mistakes. And but all I was thinking was, well, he obviously has, hasn't he? Because I don't have it. And all I was thinking about, so focused on playing football again, that's all I was thinking about. Yeah. It's just, I want to play. I want to play.
Man. Really, I mean, it's a big kind of disruption in your life. I guess you ask some questions, but nothing more than that. You just focus back on the football.
Yeah. Completely.
So the scare is over. You recover from the injury. I mean, how does the football go after that?
Well, I didn't really recover from the injury, and this is where the lies started to come into my career. I realized deep down that I wasn't healing and I wasn't recovering on the time frame that I should have. And so I started to panic a bit and think, these lads who I was well ahead of in the pecking order, they're now in my place. And if I don't start playing again soon, I'm not going to have my contract renewed. So I'm going to be like 19, 20, and that's going to be the end of it. And so when the physios would kind of manipulate my ankle or twist it or move it and say, does this hurt? Even though it did, I said it didn't. And I started taking lots of anti-inflammatories and doing silly things and lie after lie, just so I could get back out on the training pitch again and play. And that's what I did. And I just kept on telling myself, it'll be okay. It'll get better soon. And even though my ankle was swelling up every day, and I didn't think sensibly at all. I just wanted to play football. And I was scared, really. I thought, I'm not any good at anything else. What else am I going to do? And all this good stuff's happened to me through playing football. If that goes, what have I got? And I remember this young physio spoke to me. And he's only a young lad. And he said, Kristian, I think it's time that you started thinking about life outside of football. Do you really want to be walking around with a limp when you're kicking a ball around with your kids when you're a bit older? And I wasn't ready to hear that. I just dismissed him as a young lad who didn't know what he was talking about. But ultimately, he was right.
Yeah,
he was absolutely right.
So, I think, did you come back to Wales to play for a while?
Yeah, Cardiff City came in for me when I was kind of 19, 20, and Palace said, you can go. They knew by then that I was done. And I felt sorry for the youth team coach as well. He must have been so frustrated with me because I'd kept it all quiet. And he'd seen what I could do. And I'm telling him I'm fine physically. And he must have been so frustrated. But ultimately, Cardiff came in. Palace said, you can go. And I went. And I signed for Cardiff City. And I just kept the lies going for as long as I could. I lasted about 18 months. And then I finally broke and gave in and walked into the office and spoke to Lenny Lawrence, the manager, and said, I need to cancel my contract. I can't be a full-time professional footballer anymore. I can't do it. I can't even feel the ball at my feet sometimes. My ankle's so numb. And he advised me to try playing semi-pro. He said, maybe if you're only training a couple of times a week, you might get away with it. So I did. Tried that for a few years, but I couldn't sustain it. So I retired as a professional footballer at 20. And then I retired completely from football when I was about 24.
So where do you go from there? I mean, from 12, you've been playing. From 15, this has been your life. Yeah, where do you go at 24? I mean, what have you got in your life at 24?
Well, I'd met a girl in school when I moved to London. So she was 14, I was 15, and we'd stayed together. And she moved to Cardiff with me when I signed for Cardiff. But when I quit football completely, professionally, she left me. And I thought she was only with me because I was a footballer. Obviously, it wasn't that. She left me because I'd completely lost the plot. And I'd started drinking. I'd started doing silly things. And I wasn't a very nice person to be around. But then a couple of months later, she turned back up at the door and said, look, I want to help you get back on track. And you need to realize that there's more to life than football. And you can just get a normal job and live a normal life. And so she got me back on track in a big way. And we got engaged, we got jobs, and everything was looking pretty rosy, actually. So we got some really good jobs and had some big plans. And she fell pregnant, and it was all looking pretty good. But sadly, we lost that child, and things just took a downward spiral again. And I was on the brink of losing the plot again. And I was just getting so fed up of people stopping me in the street and saying, why did you quit as a footballer? And where's the baby and all this stuff? And I just didn't want to be another one of those guys that you hear them down the pub all the time, talking about how they could have been the next David Beckham, but if only they didn't have this injury, And I didn't want to be that guy. So I never really spoke much about the injury at all. And I would just say, I didn't want to be a footballer. And that's the end of it. And I'd walk off. But I just wanted to get away. I was just fed up. And so we planned to get married in Thailand on Christmas Day, and made all the arrangements and everything else just to escape. Never invited any family. Just wanted to go, the two of us. But then Carla fell pregnant again, and she was too heavily pregnant to fly. So we had to cancel our wedding, cancel the holiday. And again, it was another one of those disappointments in life. I just thought, anything else, anything else that wants to go wrong. But that was the year that the tsunami hit, that Christmas. We were at my nan and granddad's house on Boxing Day, and Thailand came on the news, and my nan said, look, it's Thailand. You should be there now. And me and Carla kind of had a bit of a grumble, saying, yeah, we're stuck here in Barry. And then we saw the devastation, and 250,000 people losing their life. And my nan repeated the words of that surgeon some years before, word for word. She said, maybe someone up there is looking out for you. And I wasn't so dismissive that time round. And I just thought, what if there actually is a God? And what if he's got a plan for my life, and it meant saving me from dying, because the hotel where we were due to stay was annihilated. There were hardly any survivors. And so I thought, this is a miracle. But the bit I couldn't get my head around was why. Why would he save me? You know, there's much nicer people in the world than me. 250,000 people died. Why not one of them? Because I'm sure they haven't done the horrible things that I've done in my life and shameful things. So why would he save me? And so that moment, it was a beautiful moment. I can't even remember how long it lasted, but it just went, and life took over. A few months later, we did successfully have our first child, Kieran. So he was born safely in March 2005. And as the years went on, I progressed in my work, and we carried on having more children. So yeah, expanding the family.
So I guess life just marches on. God has kind of come on the scene in your thinking, but nothing more than that. So I still don't quite understand how you've ended up in Herefordshire as a minister. So I mean, you know, cancer scare, losing football, you know, all that you've been through, that hasn't done it. So where did the big change happen? What brought you to Christianity?
So it was my wife again. So Carla went to a mother and toddler group, and the ladies were inviting her to come to hear a lady give her a testimony of how she came to faith. And so my wife tried to wriggle out of it, even though she was brought up going to Sunday school and had often said, oh, it'd be nice to take the children to church on a Sunday. I'd always been very adamant against it. But I think she bumped into several of the ladies on the day of this testimony meal, and then she was struggling to wriggle out of it. So she just said to me, look, I'm going to go. I said, that's fine. I think I was watching the football or something anyway. And she came home that evening just glowing and excited. And I could tell she'd been crying. And she said, where's that New Testament that one of your customers gave you? Because I was in sales and security, and I'd have lots of Christian customers, and they'd often try and witness to me or give me a Bible. And for some bizarre reason, I never threw them in the bin. I would throw them into this drawer or this bottom of this cupboard that we had in the bedroom. And so I pointed to the cupboard, and my wife ran to this cupboard, grabbed this New Testament, and started reading some verses from John's Gospel that she had heard the lady who'd shared a testimony read like an hour before. And she'd be reading these verses and then looking at me for a reaction. And I thought she'd gone mad. And she said, can you not hear what I'm saying? And I said, yeah, I can hear what you're saying. I just don't understand. What's the big deal? And she said, God's real. And then she started to share what had happened to her that night, that she'd given her life to Jesus. And I just thought, okay, well, that's nice, but that's not for me. But over the coming weeks, I couldn't deny that there was change in her. She just had this peace and this contentment, because we were so materialistic. We had the footballer's lifestyle, but without the pressure of being a footballer. You know, my job paid an obscene amount of money. So we had a big detached house, brand new cars on the drive, trips to Florida, weekends away in Milan and Paris. Whatever we wanted, we just bought. It was ridiculous. But we were never, ever satisfied. And yet now, my wife, who had always wanted more and bigger and better, now was just completely content. And she kept on saying, oh, I want us to go to church. I want us to go as a family. And initially I kept saying no. And then one Sunday I just thought, yeah, it'd be nice for the kids. And this means a lot to my wife. So I'll do it for her. And so we went to church, but it took a little bit longer than it did for my wife and me. And I just saw it as an exercise to have a bit of a laugh, really. So I was a nightmare, absolute nightmare. And people were lovely. We went to Bethel Baptist Church in Barry. Merv Neal was the pastor there, and Matt Emerton, the assistant pastor. And they were great, the pair of them. And I could really relate to Merv, especially with his past as being a professional rugby player. And I thought, yeah, this he's a cool guy. But when he started preaching, it straight over the top of my head, I thought, no, that's where I draw the line. This is not for me. So I just used to do silly things, sit in people's seats, wind people up, say stupid stuff. I was trying to make it entertaining. But then one day, Merv was preaching through Corinthians on how to be a godly dad and a godly husband. And I knew I was neither of those things. And on that service, I knew God was real. And it wasn't a very nice experience, which I know is really strange, because you hear so many Christians say when they met God for the first time, they felt love and joy and peace and contentment, just as my wife had felt. I didn't feel any of that. I felt fear. And I absolutely knew for certain, 100%, that God was real. And that if I had died in that very moment, I wasn't going to heaven. Because it was weird. Even though as a kid, I never believed in God, I always assumed that I would go to heaven, which doesn't make sense. But that's what I believed, because I wasn't a murderer, I wasn't a rapist, I wasn't a pedophile, I wasn't, a bad person, really. So I'd be okay. But in that moment when I realized God was real, I realized that even the things that I thought were small, bad things were not just bad against the people that I'd hurt, but they were offensive to God directly. And that I had to give an account for him on the day that I died. And that just scared me more than anything else in my life. And when you're confronted with that level of fear, I think you either face up to it or you run away. And I ran away. And I said to my wife, we're never, ever going back to church again. And I was just running away. And I associated God being at church. And I thought, I can't go there. I can't face him again. Eventually I did. I caved in and went back. And then when I heard about the cross, I heard about Jesus and forgiveness, and that my sin was paid for, and that I could have confidence standing before God, not because of the good stuff I'd done, because that was just rubbish anyway, but because of the good in Jesus, and trusting in him was the key. And I thought, I can do that. I can't do enough to get to heaven, but I can do that. I can trust in Jesus. And I don't know loads about the Bible. I know almost nothing. But I genuinely believe that Jesus did die for me on the cross, and that he lived a perfect life, and he died the death I should have died. And he rose on the third day. And I thought, I believe that. That's real. And Merv said to me, that's enough. That's enough.
And how did that affect you? You said your wife, she gained a contentment and a peace that she hadn't had before. I mean, how did it affect you, having seen that Jesus had died for you? Yeah, what effect did that have on your life?
It changed everything. And I know that's a big comment to make, but it did. It was like I was given a new perspective on absolutely everything. So parenting, my relationship with my family, my friends, my wife, money, my job, everything. Just, I had to reevaluate everything. It was like I've been blind my whole life, but not been actually seeing what was going on. It's kind of like the Matrix in a way, it's all a lie. Everything's a lie. And now I know the truth. So it changes how I should live. And there was two clear things that I felt God was telling me to do. I didn't hear an audible voice from heaven or anything like that. But it was just like these two things that wouldn't go away in my thinking. And every time I'd read the Bible, every time I'd pray, it was these two things that would come up. And this was in the first 2 weeks of being a Christian. And one was, give away everything you got. Just get shot of it. All the material stuff, the house, the cars, everything, get rid of it. The second was tell people about me. So to preach and or be a minister. I was thinking about these kind of things. I thought, this doesn't make any sense. Even though I'd read the Bible several times very, very quickly, I'd not kind of studied it. I didn't own a commentary, or I didn't know who Moses was on the day I became a Christian. So that's how little I knew, and I still don't know much now. But these things wouldn't go away, and I was quite cool with giving everything away. I know this sounds mad, but I think God wants us to get rid of all this material stuff. And she said, great, I've been thinking the same thing. So that was fine. But the ministry thing, I wasn't up for that. Not in the slightest. I really wanted to be the guy in church who discreetly gives. So just sits on the back row, helps out now and again. Maybe I'll do a bit of youth work or whatever, never at the front, and just give. So I wanted to kind of give in secret. So if ever there was a fundraising thing, I wanted to be the one to just discreetly chuck a couple of grand in and nobody knows it was me. That's the guy I wanted to be in church.
But God clearly had different plans. Now, Kristian, we're going to come back to that in a moment, but let me just give you a bit of a rest because you've covered a lot of ground there for us. If you've tuned in and you're watching this is the watering hole from Cornerstone Church in Abergavenny, and one of the things we're really passionate about doing, particularly during this pandemic, is just helping people to think through the big questions of life. And we've got a couple of different ways we want to help you in doing that. The first thing is we'd love to give you a book to read. We've got a number of books that we will send to you completely free. Let me put them up on the screen for you. There's a few different books that you can see there. The first one is City Lives. That's a book which has a collection of stories, just like Kristians, of different people in different areas of life and how they became a Christian. There's also a book called Beyond the Big Sea, where a chap called Jeremy Marshall, who shared his story on here a month ago, talks about his life with cancer and how his faith helps him through that. There's also a book called My Mate's Gone Mad. Last week we had Graham Daniels on, and this is a book just looking at the fact that, is Christianity is true? Is it relevant? And we'd love to give you that book as well. So if you want one of those books, either comment below and we'll contact you, or go to our website, abercec.org.uk. You can find us on Google by just searching Cornerstone Church Abergavenny, and you can contact us through the website and we'll send you those books for free. And also, as an extra special, we'll add in as well this week this little booklet called From the Pitch to the Pulpit, which is a little kind of pricey version of Kristian's life, and we'd love to give you one of those as well. But the other thing we'd love to invite you to do is something called Alpha. It's going to be on Zoom starting in July, and it'll be on a Sunday evening. And it's an opportunity actually not just to come and listen, but to come and ask questions and to get involved yourself. There's no heavy sell. You won't be asked to do anything that would make you feel awkward or embarrassed. But it would be a great opportunity to investigate the Christian faith. I've got a little trailer for you to see about Alpha. This is by one of my heroes, a guy called Bear Grylls. So have a little watch of this.
What does it take to live a life of adventure? The truth is, the first step is always the hardest. That's the one that takes the most courage. But I've learned not to run from that fear and just do it. My Christian faith can be a little up and down, like any relationship. It has struggles and it has doubts. But it's so often brought light to a dark path, warmth to a cold mountain, and strength to a failing body. I remember crawling onto the summit of Everest and clearing the snow from my mask to see the curvature of the earth at the edges. But finding a simple faith that empowers my life, to me, that's been my greatest adventure. Got questions about life? Try Alpha.
As well. So if you're interested in Alpha, we'll be running it in July, and we'll be putting information on social media on the website about that. It would be great to see you there. And we're even saying if you feel coming onto a Zoom call to do it is a little bit too intense, we're more than happy to send you the links to the videos that you can watch anytime you want. No pressure. So look, if there's any way we can help you, just let us know. So, Kristian, we're going to come back to you. Now, if anybody's got any questions, please put them in the comments. I'm watching the comments here, and any question you put up, I will ask Kristian, okay? You can ask any question. It can be anything about faith or football, anything you want to ask, and that'll be great to ask him. But, Kristian, let me come back to you. I mean, your life has been one of tremendous highs, but as well of tremendous lows. You shared about your father's struggles and all that entailed. You shared about you and your wife losing your first baby. Have you ever kind of been tempted just to be angry at God and dismiss him? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, it was really reassuring when I started to read the Bible and read about people who had broken lives. And I thought, wow, it's time after time that people are in these really difficult situations. And some of these people are angry at God, and they're telling him how angry they are. They're telling him how disappointed they are. Reading Job, reading the Psalms, and, where are you? Why have you done this? And all these big questions. And I thought, oh, well, I'm feeling that within. And it seems that it's okay to sometimes be angry with God. And he doesn't punish these people for expressing how they feel inside. And then you get to parts of the Bible and you read that God knows what we're thinking anyway, that he looks beyond our outward appearance. He sees the heart. So you think, actually, I think he appreciates the honesty, because it's showing more integrity, if anything, when we're letting him know exactly how we feel. And he can take it. That's the beautiful thing. And he's so patient and so loving and so willing to listen to our gripes and our whinges. And sometimes he has to do what he did with Job and say, look, where were you when I created the stars? Remember who I am. Remember who you are. I'm creator. You're the created ones. But yeah, that's okay to have those feelings. I've learned to accept that, but it's fine. It's not a sin to feel that way.
That's really helpful. And, when you were you said early on you read the Bible through a few times, and I guess you've read it through a lot more since. Richard has asked a question. Do you have a favourite part of the Bible?
At the moment, we're going through Philippians in Wellington Chapel, and I've read Philippians lots and lots of times over the years, but I can't say that I've ever really studied it and then really taken my time. And I am absolutely loving it. And I know that everybody says, oh, it's the letter of joy and it's all about joy. But the thing that I'm seeing in it is the sense of unity. And you can have diversity, and most churches will be very, very diverse. People, different ages, different life experience, different hurts, different color of the skin, different class maybe. And yet, in Jesus, they're united together in a way that is not normal in the world. And that is just something I think very relevant to what's going on in the world at the moment, but also extremely reassuring that it doesn't matter how different these Christians appear to be. I'm different from everyone else. We're all different parts of the body. But yet God embraces each and every one of us when we come to him in the name of Jesus. Yeah.
I think, with everything that's going on around the world at the moment, that's such an important message, isn't it? Is that actually the gospel says everybody is equal. We're all created in the image of God. Jesus died for us all. Really the church should just be all people from, as you said there, all different backgrounds, and Jesus is the great unifier in that sense.
He certainly is. Yeah.
That's great. Let me pick up on, because obviously you're a minister now. I kind of stopped your story earlier on. You've just become a Christian. You've given loads of things away. I might come back to you on that to ask some questions. I think, if I'm right to say this, you then went to work for the church doing youth work and some kind of pastoral ministry.
Yeah, so I became the church apprentice, which I didn't really know what that meant. Matt just said to me, look, we'll just try you in everything. We'll give you a taste of everything. I'd been doing youth work for about, I think, a year or so. And I was really enjoying that. And I preached a couple of times, and gone to a few different churches that asked me to go. But Matt said, look, you'll try everything. You'll give everything a go. And so I did that for about 12 months. The plan was to do it for 2 or 3 years. I did it for 12 months. And then the church asked me to become the assistant pastor. There was a vacancy. They'd been looking for an assistant pastor, and some crazy person had said, "What else? We have Kristian." And the church voted, and they said, "Yeah, that sounds good." But because I wasn't brought up in a Christian home, and I just felt inadequate, really, in my Bible knowledge and learning. And I thought it was important that I go to Bible college. But at the same time, I didn't want to abandon my responsibilities in the church. So I did much of my degree in theology through distance learning. And I went over then to Milan 7 times a year to have some intense studies, and did all the essays and stuff. Not the easiest way to do it, looking back, with a family and 5 children and a full-time church ministry role. But it was well worthwhile, and it gave me a good grounding. And I'm very thankful for that opportunity to do that. Yeah.
Now, perhaps people watching this don't know the church in Barry, but I mean, the church that I've known for a number of years, it's a big church. It's a successful church in the sense of, people become Kristians, and, it's an exciting place to be. Even the minister gets sent onto the mission field in India, I think. I mean, it's a great first church to be an assistant to. Yeah. But you've gone then from that kind of a big kind of Barry life to Wellington Chapel, which I think then is a smaller church. What made you do that? What was that all about?
Well, we were very blessed in witnessing God at work in Bethel, in Barry. We'd come into a church that was kind of 60, 70 people every week, meeting in a schoolroom, and then moving back into the church building. And all we saw week after week after week, consistently for years, was people being restored to faith, people being saved, the church growing, the youth work exploding. That was normal, because I'd never been a member of another church. So I just thought, this is what God does. This is what church is like. But then I and one of those churches was Wellington Chapel. And there was 12 members in the church. The morning service, I think there was about 15 or 20 people. The evening service wasn't in double figures. There was, I think, 8 people. And at the end of the day that I was there preaching with them, one of the elders approached me and said, "We're looking for a pastor. Would you consider the position?" And I said, "Absolutely not. Not a chance." And I was just honest and said, "Look, this is what's going on in Barry, and it's my hometown, and it's so exciting. It's church I've saved in, etc., etc." And he said, "Would you at least pray about it?" And I thought, "Oh, it's got me now, because I'm going to have to pray." And I couldn't stop thinking about those people in Wellington Chapel. And I'd just be doing normal day-to-day thing. I'd just be queuing up in a shop, and I'd be thinking, I wonder what Kay's doing. This is one of the members in Wellington Chapel. I'll just pray for her. And it was just consistently all the time. And I spoke to several people and took their counsel on this, very godly, experienced ministers. And they all said the same thing. Maybe God's calling you to go there. And on paper, it might not look like it makes sense, but God doesn't always work like that. So you just need to pray about it. And spoke with my wife, and she was willing. So that was a great thing as well. And that's no easy thing, to make that decision to take all of your kids out of school, find a new place, sell your house, move, and move to a church that on paper hasn't got enough money to support you long term. Well, there's 12 members in an aging church. But we are just so grateful to God for this little fellowship, for all that's happened in the last 12 months. Not just that we've grown numerically, but the people are just, they love Jesus, and they want learn more. They want to read the Bible. They want to pray. They've seen incredible answers to prayer, so that's given them confidence in their faith. And now they've got a confidence to share their faith with other people and invite people to church, which is the place where people need to be, because special things happen in church. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Now, if someone's watching this, Kristian, and they come from kind of Herefordshire, because we're really close to each other, how do they find your church? How do they find out more about Wellington Chapel? What can they do?
Yeah, so you can go online, wellingtonec.org.uk. So our website's there, all the sermons and information's on there. There's also a YouTube channel, which I think is either Wellington Chapel or it's in my name, I'm not sure. I have to check that one out. But yeah, we're still a relatively small fellowship, and wherever, if you're listening in wherever part of the world you're from, even if your local church is a smaller fellowship, I wouldn't say that's a reason not to go there, because I love the fact that you can know everyone in the church intimately and get involved and share your life with everyone. Now, there's nothing against mega churches with thousands of people, but realistically, you're not going to get to know everyone in that kind of church. So yeah, it's and we're in between Hereford and Leominster, so just a little village with about 900 people. But we're thankful that people come along from quite a bit of a distance as well, so that's encouraging.
Well, look, Kristian, we've got 90 seconds left. Okay. I'm going to chuck some really difficult quickfire questions at you. Okay. And it's just a one sentence for each one. I'm going to ask you what you would say if you could say anything to your younger self at different phases of life. Cool. So to a young boy who's at home and is seeing mental health issues and violence, what would you say to that child?
I'd say it's not your fault, and it's not your dad's fault.
Thank you. To someone who perhaps is doing well in sport or education and the world seems at their feet, and everything is theirs for the taking, what would you say to them?
Always have a plan B.
Good. And what about perhaps a younger couple who have just lost a baby? What would you say to them?
That's a harder one. The grief will pass. And time is here, and that's a bit corny to say that, and it's a bit of a cliche, but it does get easier with time. There'll always be that pain there, but God is the greatest comforter, and it's a great time to call on him, that's for sure.
Thank you. And just one last question to the guy whose wife has just become a Christian, or to the woman who has just started kind of going to a toddler group, what would you say to them?
Give it a go. Give church a go. Give Jesus a go. And even if you go to church just to have a laugh and mess around to start off with, you might accidentally end up with eternal life with Jesus forever. It'll be the greatest decision you ever made.
Perfect. Kristian, thank you so much for joining us. And everybody who's listened and asked questions, thank you so much. Please come to the website. We'd love to give you some books for free, and we'd love to see you at Alpha as well. Thank you very much.